The wind screamed against the glass walls of my father's lakeside mansion in Vermont, but nothing could match the hurricane about to tear through that dining room. "Congratulations, Ryan." My father's voice cut through the silence like a blade, as he slid a thick envelope across the mahogany table to my younger brother. Inside that envelope? Everything. The deed to our family villa, the company that built our fortune, offshore accounts worth millions, all of it now belonged to the Golden Boy. I sat frozen across from them, 34 years old but feeling like a scared 10-year-old again. My palms were ice-cold against my black slacks as I fought to keep my face blank. Ryan couldn't even look at me, his jaw was clenched tight, eyes glued to the table like a guilty child. My stepmother fidgeted with her diamond necklace, suddenly fascinated by the floor, then my father turned those cold, calculating eyes on me. "And you, Ava," he sneered, his voice dripping with disgust, "you've always been a pathetic dreamer. Too weak, too soft-hearted to survive in the real world." My stomach dropped like I'd been punched. There were 5 people in that room, him, Ryan, my stepmother, the family attorney, and me. But I had never felt more completely alone. He shoved a stack of papers toward the lawyer. "Let's get this signed and finished." "Dad," I choked out, my voice barely a whisper, "please don't do this." He actually rolled his eyes at me. "Spare me the drama, Ava. You made your choice when you decided to find your purpose." He made mocking air quotes that felt like slaps. "You walked away from this family to work in some pathetic clinic overseas. For what? No money, no status, just completely wasted time. You never asked why I left," I whispered, tears threatening to spill. "You never cared," I added, my voice breaking. "And I still don't," he snapped back like a viper. "Because Ryan was here. Ryan showed loyalty." "He showed you what you wanted to see," I said quietly, finding a spark of strength. "But he lied to you." My father's laugh was bitter and cruel. "That's just jealousy talking, sweetheart." The attorney, a gray-haired man named Mr. Whitman, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. His fingers tightened around his leather folder, like he was holding something explosive. "Actually," he said, clearing his throat nervously, "before anyone signs anything, there's something you all need to hear." My father's face darkened. "What the hell are you talking about?" Mr. Whitman looked him straight in the eye, and I saw something flicker there, something that looked like justice. "There's a sealed amendment to the will, added 6 years ago at the specific request of your late mother." My heart stopped. My grandmother. The only person who ever truly saw me. The only one who used to whisper, "You have more strength in your silence than most people have in their loudest screams." "What amendment?" my father barked, irritation turning to rage. Mr. Whitman calmly opened his folder and pulled out a yellowed document that looked like it held the power to change everything. "This was filed during your mother's final appointment. Her instructions were crystal clear, it was to remain sealed unless you ever attempted to completely disinherit Ava." My father's face went white. "That's ridiculous." "She had no authority." "She did," Mr. Whitman interrupted, his voice stronger now. "She retained 51% ownership in Harborcrest Holdings until the day she died. You never legally challenged it, which means she had every right." Ryan shifted in his seat like the ground was crumbling beneath him. My stepmother's hand froze on her necklace. Mr. Whitman turned to me, and I saw something like hope in his eyes. "Miss Ava, would you like me to read it, or would you prefer to read it yourself?" I couldn't move. My eyes stayed locked on that envelope in Ryan's hands, the one that held everything my father thought he controlled. "Read it," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. He cleared his throat and unfolded the page that would change my life forever. "In the event that my granddaughter Ava Whitmore is deemed unworthy by her father, I hereby grant her full authority over my share of Harborcrest Holdings, to be enacted immediately. All voting rights are to be transferred to her name upon activation of this clause. This amendment shall override any previous agreements regarding decision-making or ownership within the company or family estate." Silence, only the sound of rain. Against the windows, softer now, as if even the storm was holding its breath. What the hell does that mean? My father exploded. Mr. Whitman turned toward me with something that looked like a smile. It means your daughter is now the majority shareholder. Nothing you sign today can override that. My father shot to his feet so fast his chair screeched backward like a wounded animal. This is insane. She doesn't even understand the business. Maybe not your version of it, I said, rising slowly, my voice steady as steel. But I know how to lead. How to protect. How to build without tearing people down. I took a step forward, and for the first time in my life, my father actually stepped back. You said I was useless, but I never needed your validation. I turned to Mr. Whitman. Let's move forward. We have a company to run. Ryan stared at the table like it might swallow him whole. My stepmother opened her mouth, then snapped it shut. My father never sat back down. If you felt that moment, when everything shifted, when the underestimated daughter finally got her power back, smash that subscribe button because what happens next will leave even her father completely speechless, but he didn't say a word. He just stood there, silent and rigid, as the world he thought he controlled shifted beneath his feet like an earthquake. The room was thick with a stillness that screamed louder than any argument ever could. My father remained frozen, his lips pressed into a hard line, jaw clenched so tight I could see his pulse hammering in his temple. His knuckles were bone white around the edge of the chair he'd abandoned, and for the first time in my entire life, I saw something I'd never seen. In his eyes of fear, not the kind that lashes out, but the kind that sinks deep, a quiet, soul-crushing fear of losing something he never thought he'd have to fight for. Please sit, I said gently. I didn't say it to humiliate him. I wasn't here for revenge. I only ever wanted what had been stolen from me for decades, dignity. Still, he didn't move. Instead, Ryan finally broke the silence. Wait, this isn't right, he said, looking around the room desperately for support. She left. She wanted no part in the business. She ran off to help people or whatever. I built homes for women escaping abuse, I said evenly. I funded transitional housing for veterans. I didn't run away, I ran towards something that mattered. He scoffed. That's nice. And all, but you don't know how to run Harborcrest. I know enough, I said, locking eyes with him, to know you've been skimming funds through a shell corporation registered under your college roommate's name. Ryan went pale as a ghost. My stepmother actually gasped. Ava, stop this, she whispered. This is family. Was it family, I asked, my voice finally breaking, when you sat by as he called me a failure? When he handed everything to Ryan without acknowledging the sacrifices I made for all of you? You were never built for this world, she said weakly. No, I nodded, tears threatening but refusing to fall. You all made that crystal clear. But Grandma thought differently. Mr. Whitman cleared his throat. Miss Ava, your grandmother didn't just leave you shares. She left something else, meant to be given only after this moment. He opened his briefcase and retrieved a small, weathered wooden box. Inside was her old gold-plated compass, the one she used to show me when I was little, telling me it would always point me toward truth. Beneath it was a folded letter with my name written in her delicate handwriting. My fingers trembled as I opened it. My dearest Ava, if you're reading this, it means your father has done exactly what I feared. Don't hate him, he's a product of a world that told him power must be loud. You were never weak. You were the quiet strength that held us together. This compass is yours now, because no matter what path you take, I trust you to lead with your heart. Tears threatened, but I blinked them back. I turned to Mr. Whitman. Let's proceed. As I signed the acknowledgement of my controlling stake, my father finally spoke. You think this makes you powerful, he said, his voice low and dangerous. You think she gave you this out of love? She did it to spite me. I looked at him, really looked, for once not as a daughter seeking approval, but as a woman who finally saw the truth. No, I replied. She did it because she believed in me. And she knew I'd use this power to build, not break. I walked out with my head high, years of rejection falling from my shoulders like chains breaking free, but what waited outside wasn't peace, it was war, because power brings enemies, and Ryan wasn't finished with me yet. I'd barely reached the corridor when I heard footsteps behind me. Ava. I turned. Ryan's voice was calm, but his eyes were calculating, like a predator sizing up prey. You don't have to do this, he said smoothly. Do what? Push me out. That's your next move, right? I haven't made any moves, I said quietly. I simply stood up. He chuckled, but there was no humor in it. You think signing some papers makes you powerful? You don't have the backbone to lead. My heart was pounding, but I didn't flinch. I'm not here to prove myself to you, Ryan. I'm here to lead with integrity, something this family forgot long ago. He stepped closer, too close. I could smell his cologne, see the rage flickering behind his fake smile. I give you 2 months, he sneered, before you come crawling back begging us to take control again. The company's not a charity, Ava, he said coldly. It's a battlefield. No, I replied, lifting my chin. It's a platform. And I'll use it to build, not break. You really are naive, he muttered, shaking his head before turning away, but something about the way he left stuck with me, his clenched fists, the stiff shoulders. This wasn't surrender. This was just the beginning of something darker. The next few days moved like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Word traveled fast through our industry. Ava Whitmore was back, and this time she wasn't just visiting. People whispered my name like it was a ghost story. Some were hopeful. Others were terrified. I didn't fire anyone immediately. I didn't hold flashy meetings or make dramatic speeches. I listened. And what I found was worse than I'd ever imagined. Departments were turned against each other like warring tribes. Promotions were handed out based on loyalty, not merit. Employee burnout was ignored completely. This wasn't a business, it was a kingdom, and Ryan had studied under the king himself. One afternoon, I walked into the break room and conversation stopped dead. Please, I said, raising my hand, you're on break. Sit. Eat. A janitor named Rosa stood up slowly, like she was afraid. We weren't allowed to sit if Mr. Ryan walked in, she said quietly. I blinked, stunned. That changes today. Her face softened, and I saw something I hadn't seen in this building for years, hope. That night, I stayed late reviewing reports. What I found made my blood run cold: 3 misused budgets, a shady deal with a questionable supplier, and a list of employees who'd been terminated after raising concerns. This wasn't just mismanagement. It was rot. And if I didn't act fast, I'd be blamed when it all came crashing down. The next morning, Ryan stormed into my office holding a manila folder like a weapon. You want the CEO seat? He snapped. Let's see you survive this. He tossed the folder onto my desk. Inside were screenshots, emails, and photos, all showing me supposedly embezzling money from charity funds. These are fake, I said, flipping through them. Can you prove it? He smirked. The question hit me like ice water. Even if they were obviously fabricated, could I prove it fast enough to save my reputation? You really want to destroy me, I whispered. I want what's mine, he hissed. You were never meant to win. I don't want to win, Ryan, I said, standing slowly. I want to fix what you broke. I see power, he sneered. You see weakness. Then he turned and walked out, and I realized this wasn't sibling rivalry anymore. This was war. Within 48 hours. Headlines flooded every news outlet: new CEO accused in charity fraud, family feud at Harborcrest Holdings, AVA Whitmore, legacy leader or liability. It didn't matter that the evidence was fake. The public doesn't wait for truth, they feast on scandal. My inbox exploded with PR alerts. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Shareholders were panicking. I had barely begun, and I was already bleeding. Credibility. I told myself to stay calm, to think strategically. But late one night, locked in my office, I finally broke. Not loud. Not messy. Just silent sobs as I curled up on the couch. I wasn't crying because they didn't believe me. I was crying because maybe, just maybe, my father had been right. Maybe I really wasn't cut out for this brutal world. Then came a soft knock on my door. I wiped my eyes frantically, but the door opened anyway. Rosa stood there with a steaming paper cup, her kind eyes full of understanding. "Thought you could use this," she said gently. "You didn't have to, you looked like you needed it," she said, walking in. "No one ever brought me anything when I cried in this room. So maybe someone should break the cycle." Something inside me cracked again, but in a softer way. "Thank you," I whispered. She sat down across from me. "Miss Ava, do you want to know the truth about your family?" I looked up, unsure. She nodded. "I've worked here 28 years. I've seen more than most people realize. And I've seen what they hide." "You always looked me in the eye," Rosa said gently. "Even when others pretended I was invisible. I couldn't speak. My throat was too tight. You may feel alone right now," she continued, "but you've got something they'll never have: loyalty earned through kindness." I blinked, trying to steady my breathing. "Why are you helping me?" I managed to ask. "Because someone once helped me when no one else would," she smiled. "And because this company doesn't need another king. It needs a healer." The next morning, I walked into the boardroom with quiet resolve. I let them speak first: accusations, doubts, demands for my resignation. One shareholder even threatened a lawsuit. When they were done, I stood. "If anyone here can prove those documents are real," I said clearly, "I'll step down today." Silence. Then I dropped my own folder onto the table: evidence of Ryan's financial misconduct, hush money, side deals, all of it documented and verified. Next, I turned on the projector. Security footage played: Ryan entering a locked office, plugging in a USB drive, transferring files. The timestamp matched exactly when the forged documents were created. Then no one spoke. "Truth matters," I said. "But I didn't come here to destroy my brother. I came to repair what he broke." I turned to the company attorney. "My grandmother gave me this role not because I was perfect, but because I still believe in people, even those who hurt me. I'm not pressing charges," I continued. "But Ryan is suspended, and a full investigation will proceed." There were stunned expressions around the table. Then Mr. Halpern, a retired board member, stood up. "I doubted you," he said honestly. "Thought you were just another idealist. But today you reminded me why we built this company in the first place. It was about people, not power." And just like that, the energy in the room shifted like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. Ryan didn't come back to work. But 2 days later, I received a letter in his handwriting: "Ava, I don't expect forgiveness. I didn't just want control, I wanted to be seen. I always thought you got the love I never did. Maybe you just earned it differently." I folded the letter and placed it beside my grandmother's compass. Not every ending needs a sword. Some arrive in stillness. And some beginnings are born from grace. The office felt different now, not quieter, but more alive. The IT had been a month since the boardroom meeting. The media had retracted their false claims. Some people tried to call it luck, but those who mattered saw the truth. I hadn't won by shouting louder, but by holding the line with integrity. One person, though, still hadn't reached out: my father. No messages, no lawyers, nothing. I assumed he'd vanished to lick his wounds and blame the world for his failures, until one Sunday morning when I walked into my office and found him sitting across from my desk, hands folded, eyes dull and defeated. "I had to see it," he said quietly. "See what?" "That you didn't burn it all down." I said nothing, studying this broken version of the man who'd once seemed invincible. He looked older, tired, for once not like a man in control, but like someone who'd lost something that truly mattered. "You were right," he said softly. "About me. About Ryan. About how this place stopped being about people." I studied him, unsure if I could believe it yet. "Why now?" I asked. He pulled something from his coat, a faded photograph. "Me and Grandma. When I was 12, both of us covered in paint, her laughing at something I'd said. She used to say you'd change this family," he whispered. I just didn't want to believe it. If I did, I'd have to admit how badly I'd failed. If I changed anything, I said gently, it's because she believed in me first. He nodded, tears threatening in his eyes. I came to say something I should have said long ago. He met my gaze fully for the first time in years. I'm sorry, Ava. For everything. Part of me wanted to say it was too late, that the damage was too deep. But healing doesn't start with blame, it starts when someone finally breaks the cycle that has so. I nodded. Thank you. I just needed to say it before I ran out of time, my father said. Then don't, I replied gently. Fix what you can. It's not too late. He didn't respond, just gave me one last quiet look before slipping out the door. 2 weeks later, Rosa stepped into my office with a thick folder. What's this? I asked. A list of every employee your father let go for speaking up, she said softly. Figured you'd want to see it. I opened the file and read every name, every story of someone who'd been punished for having integrity. Then we sent out letters, each one an invitation to return, no questions asked, not because I needed redemption, but because legacies aren't built on bloodlines. They're built on how you make people feel when they leave the room. Months passed. The company didn't look flashier, but it looked warmer. Employees smiled in hallways. Ideas flowed freely in meetings. Profits actually increased. When people felt valued, Ryan never returned to the company, but we met once for coffee. No apologies, no digging up the past, just two siblings trying to understand each other. Maybe that was enough. Damn, why father kept his distance. But one day I received something unexpected, a receipt for a 7-figure donation made in my name to the women's shelter where I once worked. No note, no signature, just his quiet way of saying he was trying, and that was enough too, because I didn't get revenge. I got something stronger, respect, peace, and a future no one could take away. Now when I walk into that boardroom, I don't hear whispers. I hear the footsteps of people who believe in me, all because one day, someone said I was nothing, and I proved them wrong without becoming them. If my story moved something inside you, drop a comment below. Tell me what part hit hardest. Tell me what you would have done. I read every single word because connection is what this journey has always been about, and if you're facing your own version of being underestimated, know this, you don't have to shout to be heard. You just have to stand steady in your truth. Subscribe to the channel if you believe in healing through strength and strength through kindness. Because sometimes the quietest ones carry the loudest legacies.